The bell above the door chimed softly, a sound Adrian had grown to love over the past 3 years. It was gentle, unassuming, much like the bookstore itself. Between the lines sat tucked on Autumn Street, a narrow cobblestone lane where time seemed to move slower, where the scent of old paper and fresh coffee mingled in the air like a promise of comfort. Adrian looked up from the counter, his fingers paused mid-turn on the page of a worn poetry collection. The afternoon light filtered through the tall windows, casting amber patterns across the wooden floor. He had been reading Neruda again, seeking solace in words that understood longing better than he could articulate it himself. The man who entered was a stranger. That much was immediately clear. Adrian knew his regulars, Mrs. Chen, who came every Thursday for her mystery novels, Marcus, who spent hours in the philosophy section, the college students who nursed single coffees for entire afternoons. This man was different. He moved with a careful uncertainty, as though he wasn't quite sure he belonged anywhere, let alone here. He was tall, lean, with dark hair that curled slightly at the ends, touched by the autumn wind outside. He wore a leather jacket over a simple gray sweater and carried a camera bag slung across his shoulder. But it was his eyes that caught Adrian's attention, hazel, flecked with gold in the slanting light, and holding something Adrian recognized all too well. Sadness, the quiet kind that had learned to wear a smile. "Can I help you find something?" Adrian asked, his voice softer than usual. The stranger's eyes met his, and for a moment something shifted in the air between them. Recognition, perhaps, though they'd never met. The kind of recognition that happens when one lonely soul glimpses another. "I'm just browsing, if that's okay." The stranger's voice was warm, slightly rough, like whiskey and honey. "Of course, take your time." Adrian offered a small smile, returning to his book, though the words now blurred on the page. He watched discreetly as the man wandered through the aisles, fingers trailing along spines, pausing occasionally to pull a book free, read a page, then carefully return it. There was reverence in the gesture, a gentleness that made Adrian's chest tighten unexpectedly. The stranger eventually made his way to the photography section, a small but carefully curated collection Adrian had built over the years. He watched as the man's entire demeanor changed, shoulders relaxing, a genuine smile touching his lips as he examined a book on landscape photography. "You have excellent taste," the stranger said without looking up. "This section is surprisingly comprehensive." "Photography is a passion of mine," Adrian admitted, closing his own book and standing. "Well, appreciating it anyway. I've never been any good behind the camera myself." The stranger looked up, and this time his smile reached his eyes. "That's what most people say before they discover they have a gift for it." "And you, are you a photographer?" "Trying to be." He set the book down carefully. "Elliot, my name's Elliot." "Adrian." He extended his hand, and when their palms met, there was a warmth that lingered a moment longer than necessary. Neither pulled away immediately. "This is a beautiful space," Elliot said, breaking the contact but not the eye connection. "How long have you owned it?" 3 years. It was my uncle's before he passed." Adrian felt the familiar ache in his chest, grief that had softened but never fully disappeared. "He left it to me. I think he knew I needed a place to belong." He wasn't sure why he'd shared that. He wasn't usually so forthcoming with strangers. But something about Elliot's presence felt safe, like a door left slightly ajar, inviting honesty. "I understand that," Elliot said quietly, "needing a place to belong." The afternoon stretched between them, filled with comfortable silence. Elliot eventually selected 2 books, one on portrait photography and a collection of short stories by James Baldwin. When he approached the counter, Adrian noticed the slight tremor in his hands. "Baldwin is brilliant," Adrian said as he rang up the purchase. "His essays changed my life when I was younger." "Mine too." Elliot's voice carried a weight of meaning. He wrote about love like it was both the simplest and most revolutionary thing in the world. Their eyes met again, and Adrian felt something shift inside him. A door he'd kept locked for 2 years, since Marcus left, since he decided that love was something that happened to other people, not to someone like him who lived quietly among books and memories. "There's a cafe across the street," Adrian heard himself say, surprising even himself. "I usually close up around 5. If you're not busy, I mean." "I'd like that," Elliot interrupted gently, saving him from his own rambling. "I'd like that very much." The cafe was called Twilight, and it was as cozy as its name suggested. They sat by the window, watching as the street lamps flickered to life, and the autumn evening painted the sky in shades of purple and deep blue. "So what brings you to Autumn Street?" Adrian asked, wrapping his hands around a mug of chamomile tea. "It's not exactly a tourist destination." Elliot smiled, stirring sugar into his black coffee. "I just moved here, a few weeks ago. I needed a fresh start, somewhere quiet where I could think, create." He paused, considering his next words. "I was living in New York for 5 years. It was incredible at first, the energy, the opportunities. But somewhere along the way I lost myself in the noise." Adrian nodded, understanding completely. "And now you're looking to find yourself again." "Something like that." Elliot's gaze drifted to the window, but Adrian sensed he wasn't really seeing the street outside. "I ended a relationship about 6 months ago. Someone I thought was the one, you know. We were together for 3 years, and I really believed we were building something. But he wanted different things, wanted me to be different." The pain in Elliot's voice was palpable, and Adrian felt it resonate with his own buried heartache. "I'm sorry," Adrian said simply, because sometimes that was all there was to say. "Don't be. I think I knew deep down that we weren't right for each other. He wanted someone bold, outgoing, someone who could match his energy at parties and gallery openings. And I'm the kind of person who finds magic in quiet moments, in the way light hits a window at dawn, in bookstores on empty streets." Adrian's heart beat a little faster. "There's nothing wrong with that. The world needs people who notice the quiet magic." Elliot's eyes found his again, and this time they held a spark of something Adrian couldn't quite name. Hope, maybe, or recognition. "What about you?" Elliot asked. "What's your story?" Adrian hesitated, running his finger along the rim of his mug. "Not much to tell, really. I grew up in this town, left for college, thought I'd make a life somewhere else. But when my uncle got sick, I came back to help. And then he was gone and the bookstore was mine, and I realized I didn't want to be anywhere else." "That doesn't sound like not much," Elliot observed gently. "That sounds like love, like sacrifice." "Maybe," Adrian smiled sadly. "I was in a relationship too for a while, Marcus. We met in college, did the long-distance thing, and when I moved back he followed. But he resented this place, resented that I chose the bookstore over moving to the city with him. Eventually, he left. Said I was choosing a dead man's dream over a future with him." The words still stung, even after 2 years. "That must have hurt terribly," Elliot said, and the empathy in his voice was genuine, uncalculating. It does." Adrian met Elliot's gaze. "But I don't regret my choice. The bookstore isn't just my uncle's dream, it became mine too. And Marcus, he wasn't wrong that we wanted different things. I just wish he'd understood that choosing myself wasn't choosing against him." Elliot reached across the table, and for a moment Adrian thought he might take his hand. Instead, Elliot's fingers stopped just short, hovering in the space between them, a gesture of comfort that respected boundaries while offering connection. "I think," Elliot said softly, "that choosing yourself is the bravest thing anyone can do, and the people who truly love us will understand that." They talked until the cafe staff began stacking chairs, until the last customers filtered out into the night. They talked about books and photography, about childhood dreams and adult disappointments, about the strange courage it took to keep hopping for love after heartbreak. When they finally stepped outside, the air had turned crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and distant rain. "Thank you," Elliot said, adjusting his camera bag. "For the coffee, for the conversation, for being easy to talk to." "Same to you," Adrian replied, surprised by how much he meant it. "Will you come back to the bookstore?" "I'd like to, if that's okay." "More than okay." They stood there for a moment, neither quite ready to walk away, both aware that something had begun, something fragile and tentative but real. "Good night, Adrian," Elliot said finally, his voice soft as the autumn wind. "Good night, Elliot." Adrian watched as Elliot walked down the cobblestone street, disappearing around the corner. And for the first time in 2 years, he felt something unfurl in his chest, something that felt dangerously like hope. Elliot returned 3 days later. Adrian had been watching the door more often than he cared to admit, his heart doing a small leap every time the bell chimed. He told himself he was being ridiculous, that one evening of conversation didn't mean anything, that Elliot probably met interesting people all the time, and Adrian was just another friendly encounter in a new town. But when the door finally opened and Elliot stepped through, carrying his camera and wearing that same gentle smile, Adrian felt his carefully constructed defenses crumble just a little more. "Hi," Elliot said, and the simple word carried the weight of relief, as though he too had been wondering if this fragile connection was real. "Hi yourself." Adrian couldn't help but smile. "Find any good photography spots in town?" "A few. The old bridge by the river is incredible at sunrise, and there's this abandoned greenhouse on the east side. The way the light comes through the broken glass is—" Elliot paused, searching for words. "It's like photographing hope growing through decay." Adrian felt his breath catch. There was something about the way Elliot saw the world, finding beauty in brokenness, that resonated with something deep inside him. "I'd love to see them sometime, your photographs." "Really?" Elliot's eyes lit up with genuine surprise, as though he wasn't used to people taking interest in his work. "Really? I meant what I said about appreciating photography, and I have a feeling your perspective is special." Elliot's cheeks colored slightly, and Adrian found the sight endearing. "I could show you now if you have time. I uploaded some to my laptop." They settled into the reading nook at the back of the store, Adrian's favorite spot, with its worn leather armchairs and view of the small garden outside. Elliot pulled out his laptop, and as he opened his portfolio, Adrian found himself leaning closer, drawn not just by the images but by Elliot's proximity, the warmth of his presence. The photographs were breathtaking. Each one told a story. An elderly couple holding hands on a park bench, their intertwined fingers weathered and strong. A child's abandoned swing moving in the wind, frozen mid-arc. A reflection of city lights in a puddle, making the ordinary magical. "Elliot, these are extraordinary," Adrian breathed, his eyes moving from image to image. "You don't just capture moments, you capture feeling." "That's the goal," Elliot said softly. "I want people to feel something when they look at my work, to remember that beauty exists even in ordinary moments, especially in ordinary moments." Adrian found himself staring at one photograph in particular, two shadows on a wall, reaching toward each other but not quite touching. The space between them felt charged with longing, with possibility. "This one," Adrian said, his voice quiet. "This one breaks my heart in the best way." Elliot was quiet for a moment. "I took that the day after my relationship ended. I was walking through the city, feeling completely lost, and I saw these shadows on a building. Two strangers passing each other, probably never to meet again. It made me think about all the connections we almost make, all the people we might love if only the timing was different, if only we were brave enough to reach out." Their eyes met, and Adrian felt the air between them grow heavy with unspoken things. "Are you brave enough now?" Adrian asked, surprising himself with his boldness. Elliot's gaze didn't waver. "I'm trying to be." The moment stretched between them, fragile and full of potential. Adrian was acutely aware of how close they were sitting, how easy it would be to close the distance, to find out if Elliot's lips were as soft as they looked. But before either could move, the bell above the door chimed, and Mrs. Chen's cheerful voice called out, "Adrian, dear, I'm here for my Thursday mystery." The spell broke, but not completely. As Adrian stood to help his customer, Elliot's hand brushed his arm, a touch that lasted only a second but left warmth in its wake. "I should let you work," Elliot said, starting to pack his laptop. "Wait," Adrian hesitated, then made a decision. "Are you free tonight? There's a poetry reading at the community center, local authors. It's small, intimate. I thought maybe, if you're interested." "I'd love to," Elliot said immediately, his smile soft and genuine. "What time should I meet you?" 7. I could pick you up if you'd like." "That would be perfect." That evening, Adrian drove through town with his heart beating faster than it should. He changed clothes 3 times before settling on dark jeans and a deep blue sweater that his friend Sarah had once said brought out his eyes. He told himself it didn't matter, that this wasn't a date, just 2 friends enjoying poetry together. But when he picked up Elliot and saw the care the other man had taken, hair slightly styled, wearing a fitted black shirt that made his hazel eyes even more striking, Adrian knew they were both lying to themselves about what this was becoming. The community center was cozy, filled with mismatched chairs and the smell of brewing coffee. About 30 people sat scattered around the room, and Adrian led Elliot to seats near the back, where they could see and hear but still feel somewhat private. The poets were varied, some young and raw, pouring out verses about heartbreak and identity, others older, their words seasoned with experience and hard-won wisdom. But it was the third poet who made both Adrian and Elliot sit up straighter. She was a woman in her 60s with silver hair and kind eyes, and she began, "This is called Love Letter to My Wife of 40 Years." The poem that followed was tender and honest, speaking of love not as a thunderbolt but as a steady fire, warming through decades of ordinary moments and extraordinary challenges. She spoke of hands held through hospital rooms, of laughter over burnt dinners, of choosing each other every day even when it wasn't easy. When she finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Adrian glanced at Elliot and saw tears tracking silently down his face. Without thinking, he reached over and took Elliot's hand, lacing their fingers together. Elliot squeezed back, holding on like Adrian was an anchor in an emotional storm. They didn't let go. Through the rest of the reading, they sat with hands clasped, and Adrian marveled at how natural it felt, how right. This wasn't the explosive passion he'd had with Marcus, all intensity and heat that burned too bright and too fast. This was something gentler, deeper, like roots growing slowly but surely into rich soil. When the reading ended and people began to mingle, they finally separated, though Adrian immediately missed the warmth of Elliot's palm against his. "Coffee?" Elliot asked, his voice slightly hoarse. "Always." They ended up at a late-night diner instead of the usual cafe, sliding into a booth with cracked red vinyl seats. The fluorescent lights should have been harsh and unromantic, but somehow, with Elliot sitting across from him, Adrian found beauty even here. "That poem," Elliot started, stirring cream into his coffee. "About 40 years of love. Do you think that's real? That kind of lasting, gentle love?" Adrian considered the question carefully. "I think it's rare, but I also think we've been taught to value the wrong things in love. We're told it should be all passion and grand gestures, and when that fades, we think something's wrong. But maybe the real magic is in the quiet stuff, in knowing someone's coffee order, in comfortable silences, in choosing each other when it's boring and mundane." Elliot's eyes were fixed on him, intense and searching. "You've thought about this a lot." "Too much, probably." Adrian smiled self-deprecatingly. "Hazard of owning a bookstore. You read a lot of love stories, see all the ways people get it wrong, and occasionally how they get it right. And what would getting it right look like for you? The question hung between them, loaded with meaning. Adrian knew this was a moment of truth, a chance to be brave or retreat to safety. He chose brave. I used to think it looked like excitement, like someone who'd sweep me off my feet and take me on adventures. But now, he paused, holding Elliot's gaze. Now I think it looks like someone who sees me, really sees me, and doesn't want me to be anything other than what I am. Someone who finds magic in the same quiet moments I do. Someone whose hand I want to hold through poetry readings and ordinary Thursdays and everything in between. Elliot's breath hitched audibly. Adrian. I know we barely know each other, Adrian continued, his heart pounding. And maybe I'm reading this all wrong, but I feel something with you that I haven't felt in a long time, maybe ever. And I think you feel it too. For a moment, Elliot said nothing, and Adrian's heart sank, certain he'd misread everything, that he'd just ruined whatever fragile friendship they were building. Then Elliot reached across the table and took both of Adrian's hands in his. You're not reading it wrong, Elliot said, his voice thick with emotion. I feel it too. From the moment I walked into your bookstore, I felt it, like I'd found something I didn't know I was looking for. Adrian's eyes burned with unshed tears. So what do we do now? I think, Elliot said, a small smile playing at his lips, we take it slow. We keep having coffee and conversations. We let this grow naturally without pressure or expectations. Because something this gentle, this real, it deserves to be treated carefully. Adrian nodded, relief and joy washing over him. Slow sounds perfect. They sat there in that diner booth until nearly midnight, hands clasped across the table, talking about everything and nothing. And when Elliot finally walked Adrian to his car, they stood in the parking lot under the stars, neither wanting the night to end. Thank you, Elliot whispered, for tonight, for being honest, for making me believe in gentle love again. Thank you for seeing me, Adrian whispered back. They stood close, so close Adrian could count the gold flecks in Elliot's eyes. For a moment he thought Elliot might kiss him. Instead, Elliot lifted Adrian's hand to his lips and pressed a soft kiss to his knuckles, a gesture so tender, so old-fashioned and romantic, that Adrian felt his heart might burst. Good night, Adrian. Good night, Elliot. As Adrian drove home, he couldn't stop smiling. He thought about that photograph of two shadows almost touching and realized that he and Elliot were no longer shadows. They were becoming real to each other, solid and present and full of possibility. And for the first time in years, he wasn't afraid of what came next. The weeks that followed were some of the happiest Adrian could remember. Elliot became a constant presence in his life, though they were careful to honor their promise to take things slow. He would come to the bookstore most afternoons, sometimes working on his laptop in the reading nook, other times wandering the aisles, discovering new books. They fell into an easy rhythm. Adrian would make tea, Elliot would share his latest photographs, and they would talk for hours about art and life and dreams. But it was the small moments that Adrian treasured most. The way Elliot would look up from his work and smile when Adrian walked by, as though seeing him was the best part of his day. The inside jokes that developed between them, references only they understood. The comfortable silences that felt more intimate than words. They went on walks through the town, Elliot photographing the changing autumn landscape while Adrian pointed out places from his childhood. They cooked dinner at each other's apartments, discovering that Elliot was surprisingly skilled in the kitchen, while Adrian was excellent at keeping him company and stealing tastes. And slowly, carefully, they began to share their deeper truths. One rainy evening, as they sat in Elliot's apartment watching the storm through the window, Elliot told Adrian about his family. Conservative, religious, unable to accept that their son was gay. He spoke about the years of trying to pray it away, the the shame and self-hatred, before finally finding the courage to live authentically, even if it meant losing the people who were supposed to love him unconditionally. "I haven't spoken to my parents in 4 years," Elliot said quietly, his fingers wrapped around a mug of hot chocolate. "My sister calls sometimes in secret. She says they ask about me, but they won't take the step to reach out. And I can't keep breaking myself trying to earn love from people who see my existence as a sin." Adrian moved closer on the couch, their shoulders touching. "I'm so sorry, Elliot. You deserved better. You deserve a family that celebrates you, not condemns you." "I'm building one," Elliot said, turning to look at Adrian. "A chosen family, friends who accept me, and maybe more than friends." The hope in his eyes made Adrian's heart race. "Maybe more," he agreed softly. In turn, Adrian shared his own struggles, the subtle homophobia of a small town that never said outright hateful things, but made him feel othered nonetheless. The relief of finding community in college, only to return home and feel isolated again. The way Marcus had sometimes made him feel like his quiet life was something to be ashamed of, rather than cherished. "He used to say I was wasting my potential," Adrian admitted, surprised by how much it still hurt. "That I could have been a professor, a writer, something important. As though creating a space where people can find solace and discovery isn't important." "He was wrong," Elliot said firmly, taking Adrian's hand. "What you've built is incredibly important. You've created a sanctuary. Don't let anyone diminish that." These conversations drew them closer, each vulnerability shared like a stone added to a foundation, building something strong and lasting. It was a Saturday in late October when everything shifted. The town was hosting its annual Harvest Festival, and Adrian had reluctantly agreed to set up a booth for the bookstore. He wasn't particularly social, but it was good for business, and Sarah, his best friend and the owner of the bakery next door, had convinced him it would be fun. What he hadn't expected was for Elliot to show up with coffee and pastries at 8 in the morning, ready to help set up. "You didn't have to do this," Adrian said, though his smile betrayed his delight. "I wanted to," Elliot replied simply. "Besides, I can take photographs of the festival for my portfolio and spend the day with you. It's a win all around." They worked together to arrange books on folding tables, creating small displays with autumn decorations Sarah had lent them. Adrian found himself hyper-aware of Elliot's proximity, the brush of their arms as they reached for the same box, the way Elliot's laugh sounded in the open air, free and genuine. As the festival began and people started browsing, Adrian noticed something that made his chest tighten with emotion. Elliot wasn't just helping. He was genuinely engaging with customers, recommending books with the same passion Adrian felt, as though the bookstore was his too. "Your boyfriend is charming," Mrs. Chen said with a knowing smile as she purchased a cookbook. Adrian felt his face heat. "Oh, he's not, we're not." But Mrs. Chen just patted his hand. "Dear boy, I've been alive for 73 years. I know what love looks like when I see it." The word love echoed in Adrian's head for the rest of the afternoon. Was this love? This gentle, steady feeling that grew stronger every day? This sense of peace and rightness he felt whenever Elliot was near? As the sun began to set and the festival wound down, Elliot grabbed his camera. "Come on," he said, taking Adrian's hand. "I want to photograph you in this light." "Elliot, I'm not photogenic." "Trust me." They walked to the edge of the festival grounds, where the old oak trees created a canopy of gold and crimson leaves. The setting sun filtered through the branches, painting everything in warm, honeyed light. "Stand there," Elliot directed, positioning Adrian against a tree. "Just be yourself, relax." Adrian felt awkward at first, unsure what to do with his hands, where to look. But then Elliot started talking to him, asking about his favorite book, about the first time he fell in love with reading. And as Adrian answered, forgetting about the camera, Elliot captured him, not posed or artificial but genuine and alive. "Got it," Elliot said finally, lowering the camera. But he didn't step back. Instead, he moved closer until they were inches apart, the camera hanging forgotten at his side. "Adrian," he whispered, and the way he said the name felt like a prayer. "Can I kiss you?" Adrian's heart stopped, then started again, racing. "I thought we were taking it slow." "We have been, but I'm tired of slow. I'm tired of being afraid." Elliot's hand came up to cup Adrian's face, his thumb brushing across his cheekbone. "I'm falling for you. I think I've been falling since the moment you smiled at me in the bookstore. And I don't want to wait any more to show you how I feel." "Yes," Adrian breathed. "Yes, please kiss me." Elliot closed the distance between them, and when their lips met, it felt like coming home. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, both of them learning the shape and taste of each other. Then Elliot's hands tangled in Adrian's hair, and Adrian's arms wrapped around Elliot's waist, pulling him closer, and the kiss deepened into something that stole breath and reason. It was nothing like the kisses Adrian had experienced before, rushed or demanding or performative. This was reverent, a conversation without words, saying things like "I see you and I choose you and I'm not going anywhere." When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Elliot rested his forehead against Adrian's. "I'm falling for you too," Adrian whispered. "So hard it terrifies me." "We'll be terrified together," Elliot promised and kissed him again, softer this time, sweeter. They stood there as the festival lights began to twinkle on around them, as the autumn evening turned cool and crisp, holding each other like they were the only two people in the world. That night they had dinner at Adrian's apartment, simple pasta and wine, eaten at the small kitchen table. But everything felt different now, charged with the knowledge of their feelings, with the freedom to touch and kiss and show affection without hesitation. "Show me," Adrian said after dinner, as they sat on the couch with the photographs Elliot had taken that day. "Show me how you see me." Elliot pulled up the images on his camera and Adrian felt his breath catch. He barely recognized himself. Elliot had captured him mid-laugh, eyes bright, looking genuinely happy. In another, he was gazing off into the distance, expression thoughtful and soft. In each image he looked beautiful, not in a conventional way but beautiful nonetheless. "This is how I see you," Elliot said softly. "This is who you are when you're not worried about being enough. You're more than enough, Adrian. You're everything." Adrian felt tears prick his eyes. "No one's ever made me feel the way you do." "Good," Elliot said, setting the camera aside and pulling Adrian into his arms. "Because you make me feel like I've finally found where I belong." They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms, and Adrian marveled at how natural it felt, how right. This was what he'd been searching for without knowing it. Not passion that burned bright and fast, but love that grew slowly, steadily, putting down roots that would last. Later, as Elliot prepared to leave, they stood at the door, reluctant to part. "Stay," Adrian heard himself say. "I mean, you don't have to, there's no pressure, I just—" Elliot kissed him quiet. "I'd love to stay." That night they lay together in Adrian's bed, fully clothed, just holding each other in the darkness. They talked in whispers about childhood dreams and future hopes, about fears and insecurities, about all the ways they'd been hurt before, and all the ways they promised to be gentle with each other. And when they finally drifted to sleep, wrapped in each other's arms, Adrian felt something settle in his chest, a peace he'd been chasing for years. This was what love was supposed to feel like. Not a storm, but a gentle rain nourishing parched earth. Not a wildfire, but a hearth fire warming cold hands. Gentle, steady, real. And absolutely worth waiting for. Winter arrived gently, the way everything seemed to happen between Adrian and Elliot. The bookstore took on a cozy hibernation quality, with fairy lights strung along the shelves and a small fireplace crackling in the reading nook. Elliot had essentially moved in, not officially, but in the way that mattered. His camera equipment had a permanent spot by the window. His favorite mug sat in Adrian's cupboard. His toothbrush rested in the bathroom holder next to Adrian's. They'd fallen into a rhythm that felt like choreography they'd been practicing for lifetimes. Mornings began with coffee shared in comfortable silence, Adrian reading while Elliot edited photos. Afternoons found them working side by side in the bookstore, which Elliot had started helping to manage, bringing a fresh perspective to social media and community events. Evenings were for cooking together, for walks through snow-dusted streets, for curling up on the couch with old movies or new books. It was ordinary, it was perfect. But as Christmas approached, Adrian noticed Elliot growing quieter, more contemplative. He'd find him staring out windows with a faraway expression, or holding his phone like he was debating whether to make a call. "Talk to me," Adrian said one evening as they decorated a small Christmas tree in the apartment. "What's going on in that beautiful head of yours?" Elliot set down the ornament he was holding, a delicate glass snowflake, and sighed. "It's stupid." "If it's bothering you, it's not stupid." Elliot was quiet for a moment then. "I got a message from my sister yesterday. My mom's been sick, nothing serious, just a bad flu, but it made me think about what happens if I never reconcile with them. What happens when they're gone and I never got to tell them I forgive them, or hear that they're proud of me, or," his voice cracked, "or introduce them to you." Adrian's heart ached for him. He set down his own ornament and pulled Elliot into his arms. "Do you want to reach out to them?" "Part of me does. Part of me wants to believe people can change, that love can overcome prejudice." Elliot pulled back to look at Adrian. "But another part of me is terrified of getting hurt again, of hopping for something that will never happen." "What if," Adrian said carefully, "you wrote them a letter, nothing confrontational, just honest. Tell them about your life, about the gallery showing you have coming up, about the community you've built here, and about us if you feel comfortable with that. You be okay with that, being mentioned. Elliot, I'm proud to be with you. I want to shout it from rooftops. If your parents can't celebrate that they raised an incredible, talented, compassionate man, that's their loss. But I also understand the need for closure, for making one more attempt at bridge building." Elliot's eyes shone with unshed tears. "How are you so wise?" "Too many books," Adrian said with a gentle smile, "and a really good therapist in college." That night they sat together at the kitchen table and Elliot composed a letter to his parents. Adrian didn't read it, that felt too private, but he held Elliot's free hand while he wrote, offering silent support. When it was finished, Elliot sealed it in an envelope, addressed it, and set it on the table. "I'll mail it tomorrow," he said, "and then I let it go. Whatever happens, happens." "Whatever happens," Adrian echoed. "You have people who love you exactly as you are, including me, especially me." "I love you too," Elliot said, and though they'd exchanged these words dozens of times over the past few weeks, they never lost their power. "Thank you for being my safe place." Christmas Eve arrived with fresh snow, and the kind of quiet that only winter nights can bring. Adrian had closed the bookstore early, and he and Elliot had spent the afternoon baking cookies with Sarah, who'd become like a sister to both of them. Now, as evening settled, they were alone again, the apartment warm and filled with the scent of pine and cinnamon. "I have something for you," Elliot said, pulling a wrapped package from behind the tree. "We said no gifts," Adrian protested, though his smile gave away his pleasure. "We said no expensive gifts. This cost nothing but time." Elliot handed him the package, nervous energy radiating from him. Adrian carefully unwrapped it to find a leather-bound photo album. His breath caught as he opened it. Every page was filled with photographs Elliot had taken over the past months, but these weren't just any photographs. They told a story, their story. The first image was from that initial day in the bookstore, a candid shot Elliot must have taken with his phone of Adrian behind the counter, head bent over a book. Then came photographs from the poetry reading, the harvest festival, quiet moments in the apartment, walks through town. Interspersed were pictures of places that had become significant to them. The cafe where they'd had their first real conversation, the bridge where Elliot liked to photograph sunrises, the reading nook in the bookstore where they'd first held hands. The final page held a photograph Adrian hadn't seen before, the two of them together, taken on a timer, sitting on Adrian's couch. Elliot's arm was around Adrian's shoulders, and they were both laughing at something, looking at each other rather than the camera. The love between them was so evident, so pure, it made Adrian's chest tighten. Below the photograph, in Elliot's careful handwriting, were the words, "A gentle love between two souls." "Elliot," Adrian whispered, tears streaming down his face, "this is the most beautiful gift anyone has ever given me." "You gave me back my faith in love," Elliot said, his own eyes wet. "You showed me that gentle can be strong, that quiet can be powerful, that choosing peace over passion doesn't mean settling. It means being wise enough to recognize real love when it finds you." Adrian set the album aside carefully and pulled Elliot into his arms, kissing him with all the love and gratitude he felt. "I have something for you too," he murmured against Elliot's lips. "Adrian, you didn't." SHH. Adrian stood and walked to his bedroom, returning with a small box. "Open it." Inside was a key, the spare key to the bookstore. Elliot looked up at him, confused. "Adrian." "I've been thinking," Adrian said, his heart pounding. "The bookstore lease is up for renewal in January, and I've been offered the chance to buy the building outright. It would be a big step, a big commitment to staying here, to building something permanent." He took Elliot's hands. "I want to do it, but more than that, I want to do it with you. I want the bookstore to be ours, if you want that too. I want to build a life here together. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep in your arms every night. I want to turn my home into our home, my dreams into our dreams." Elliot stared at him, mouth slightly open. "You want me to stay, permanently?" "I want you to stay forever if you'll have me." Adrian smiled nervously. "I know it's fast by some people's standards, but it also feels like the most natural thing in the world, like this was always meant to happen." "Yes," Elliot breathed. "Yes, absolutely yes." He kissed Adrian fiercely, desperately, joyfully. "I'll stay forever. I'll help you buy the bookstore. I'll build a life with you. I'll choose you every single day for the rest of my life." They held each other, laughing and crying at the same time, overwhelmed by the enormity and simplicity of what they were promising each other. Later they lay in bed, bodies intertwined, hearts beating in sync. "Do you think they'll ever understand?" Elliot asked quietly, and Adrian knew he was thinking about his parents. "I don't know," Adrian answered honestly. "But even if they don't, you have a family. You have Sarah, you have Mrs. Chen and Marcus from the philosophy section, and all the customers who have come to adore you. You have this whole town that's watched us fall in love and celebrated it with us." He pressed a kiss to Elliot's temple. "And you have me, always." "Always," Elliot echoed, and sealed the promise with a kiss. Spring arrived with cherry blossoms and new beginnings. Adrian and Elliot officially purchased the bookstore building, renaming it Between the Lines, a space for stories and souls. They expanded the photography section, added a small gallery space for local artists, and created a community room for workshops and readings. Elliot's gallery showing had been a success, with several pieces selling and a review in a regional art magazine that called his work achingly human and beautifully hopeful. He'd started teaching photography classes at the community center, finding joy in sharing his passion with others. The letter to his parents had received a response, brief, stilted, but a response nonetheless. They weren't ready for reconciliation, his mother had written, but they were glad he was well and wished him happiness. It wasn't much, but it was a start. A door left slightly ajar. On a warm Saturday in April, they held a grand reopening celebration for the bookstore. Sarah provided pastries, local musicians performed, and it felt like the entire town turned out to support them. As Adrian stood in the crowded space, watching Elliot laugh with a group of students from his photography class, he felt a hand on his shoulder. "Your uncle would be so proud," Mrs. Chen said, her eyes kind. "Not just of what you've built, but of the man you've become, and the love you've found." "Thank you," Adrian said, his voice thick with emotion. "That means more than you know." As the sun set and the last customers filtered out, Adrian and Elliot stood together in the empty bookstore, surveying their kingdom. "Remember when I walked through that door 6 months ago?" Elliot asked, slipping his hand into Adrian's. "I remember thinking you looked lost," Adrian admitted, "like you were searching for something." I just didn't know it yet." Elliot turned to face him fully. "I was searching for home, for belonging, for someone who would love me gently, completely, exactly as I am." "And did you find it?" Adrian asked, though he knew the answer. "I found everything," Elliot whispered, pulling him close. "I found my home, my purpose, my soulmate. I found you." They kissed in the golden light of their bookstore, surrounded by thousands of stories, knowing they were writing the most beautiful one of all, their own. Outside, the first stars began to appear in the deepening blue sky. Inside, two souls who had found each other against all odds held tight, ready to face whatever came next together. Because that's what love is, not the absence of fear or pain, but the courage to face it alongside someone who sees your scars and chooses to stay. Not fireworks and grand gestures, but quiet mornings and shared dreams and hands held through poetry readings and ordinary Tuesdays. A gentle love, a lasting love, a love between two souls who'd been wandering alone until they found each other and realized they'd been searching for home all along. And they lived, not happily ever after, because life is never that simple, but happily, lovingly together. Building a life one gentle moment at a time, one book, one photograph, one kiss, one day at a time. Together, always.